The billionaire's fiancée smiled as she looked down at the little girl standing alone in the center of the grand ballroom. "You really thought you could come here wearing that?" she said, loud enough for every guest to hear. The room filled with awkward laughter. The little girl lowered her eyes and held her father's hand tighter. She was only 9 years old. Her name was Maya Brooks. And beside her stood her father, a quiet black single dad who hadn't spoken a single word since they walked into the mansion. Vanessa Sterling stepped closer, her designer heels clicking across the marble floor. "You embarrassed this entire party," she sneered. Before anyone could react, she grabbed the shoulder of Maya's faded blue dress and ripped it apart. The sound echoed through the ballroom. More than 400 guests froze. The orchestra stopped playing. Even the waiters stood motionless. Maya covered herself with trembling hands as tears rolled down her cheeks. No one moved. No one said a word. Everyone expected her father to explode. Instead, Elijah Brooks quietly removed his suit jacket and wrapped it around his daughter's shoulders. Then he looked directly at Vanessa. His face showed no anger, no fear, only disappointment. Vanessa laughed. "What are you staring at?" she mocked. "That dress wasn't worth $50. Without saying a word, Elijah reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a worn black leather folder. He placed it gently on the banquet table. The moment billionaire Richard Whitmore saw it, his smile disappeared. The color drained from his face. His wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. He whispered only 4 words. "Where did you get that?" Before anyone could understand what was happening, the mansion's head of security rushed across the ballroom. Not toward the billionaire, but toward Elijah. And what happened in the next few minutes would destroy one family's reputation and reveal a secret that had been buried for nearly 20 years. 3 months earlier, every morning, before the sun climbed over the quiet streets of Greenwich, Connecticut, Elijah Brooks was already awake. His alarm rang at exactly 5:15 a.m. He never hit snooze. He quietly folded his blanket, slipped on an old gray hoodie, and walked into the tiny kitchen of the modest 2-bedroom apartment he shared with his 9-year-old daughter. The apartment wasn't luxurious. The paint on the walls had begun to fade. The kitchen cabinets had scratches from years of use. The coffee maker buzzed louder than it should. But to Elijah, it was home. He cracked 2 eggs into a frying pan while pancakes browned on the stove. As always, he made one pancake slightly smaller than the others. Maya liked calling it the baby pancake. Right on cue, tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Daddy," Maya whispered sleepily. "You made the baby pancake again." Elijah smiled without turning around. "I think it missed you." Maya giggled. She wrapped her arms around her father's waist. Ever since her mother passed away 5 years earlier, mornings like this had become their little tradition. No matter how difficult life became, breakfast was sacred. Elijah believed a child should begin every day feeling loved, even if the rest of the world wasn't always kind. He placed the plate in front of Maya. 2 pancakes, 1 egg, fresh strawberries he had bought on sale the night before. She looked at him with wide brown eyes. "You didn't make one for yourself." "I'm not that hungry." She frowned. "You always say that." Without another word, she cut 1 pancake in half and pushed it onto her father's plate. "We share." Elijah looked down for a second before smiling. "We always do." After breakfast, Elijah drove Maya to school in his 12-year-old pickup truck. The truck wasn't pretty. Its blue paint had faded. The driver's seat had been stitched together twice. The air conditioner only worked when it wanted to. But every Saturday, Elijah washed it by hand. Maya called it Old Blue. As they stopped outside the elementary school, Maya reached into her backpack. "Daddy." "Yeah. Our spring gala is next month." "I know. They said parents have to come." "I'll be there." "You promise?" Elijah looked at her. "I've never broken a promise to you." She smiled. "I know." She kissed his cheek before jumping out of the truck. As she ran toward the school entrance, Elijah waited until she disappeared through the doors. Only then did he drive away. He always waited. Every single morning. Elijah owned a small restoration workshop on the edge of town. Unlike ordinary repair shops, he specialized in restoring antique furniture. Broken rocking chairs, century-old dining tables, family heirlooms, things other people considered worthless. People often asked why he didn't open a larger business. The truth was simple. A bigger company meant longer hours. Longer hours meant less time with Maya. And nothing mattered more than her. Inside the workshop, old jazz music played softly from a dusty radio. The smell of cedar wood filled the room. Elijah carefully polished the surface of a hand-carved walnut desk. His hands moved with remarkable precision. Years of hard work had taught him patience. Customers trusted him because he never rushed. His closest friend, Marcus, often teased him. "You know, man, you could make a fortune if you doubled your prices." Elijah smiled. "I already have everything I need." Marcus laughed. "You always say that." It's still true. That afternoon, Elijah received a phone call from Maya's teacher. For a brief moment, his heart raced. Had something happened? He answered immediately. "Mr. Brooks, this is Mrs. Bennett. I just wanted you to know Maya helped another student today." "What happened?" "A little boy forgot his lunch. So Maya gave him hers." Elijah smiled. "And what did she eat?" Mrs. Bennett laughed softly. "Nothing. She told us she'd already eaten." When the call ended, Elijah remained silent for several seconds. His daughter had inherited something far more valuable than money. Kindness. Exactly like her mother. That evening, Maya rushed into the apartment carrying a colorful flyer. "Daddy! Our school gala." She handed him the invitation. The annual Children's Hope Charity Gala. Hosted by Whitmore Global Foundation. Sponsored by billionaire Richard Whitmore. Maya bounced excitedly. "There'll be music. And dancing. And a silent auction. And they said every family has to dress nicely." Elijah carefully read the invitation. His smile slowly disappeared. At the bottom of the page, he noticed one more name. Event Director, Vanessa Sterling. His expression changed for just a moment. So briefly, most people would never have noticed. But Maya did. "Daddy, what's wrong?" He folded the invitation. "Nothing. You don't like parties. I've survived worse things." She laughed. "So we'll go?" He looked into her hopeful eyes. There was no chance he could disappoint her. "We'll go." She squealed with excitement before running into her bedroom. Elijah remained standing in the kitchen, quiet, thoughtful. His eyes slowly drifted toward the old wooden cabinet beside the refrigerator. He unlocked the bottom drawer with a small brass key. Inside lay only one object. A worn black leather folder. Its edges were cracked with age. The corners had faded from years of careful handling. He picked it up gently, ran his thumb across the cover, and for the first time in years, he opened it. Inside were several documents. An old photograph, a sealed envelope, and one yellowed certificate that carried a signature capable of changing lives. Elijah stared at it for a long moment before quietly closing the folder again. Just then, Maya stepped back into the kitchen wearing a faded blue dress. "Daddy, this is the dress Mommy bought me before she got sick. I still fit in it. What do you think?" Elijah looked at her. For a brief second, his eyes filled with emotion. "It's beautiful." "You really think so?" "I know so." She smiled proudly and spun around. The dress wasn't expensive. In fact, it had been patched twice at the hem. But to Maya, it was priceless. Because it was the last birthday gift her mother had ever given her. Elijah silently promised himself that no matter what happened at that gala, no one would take that memory away from his daughter. He had no idea that within a few weeks, that very dress would become the center of a humiliation that an entire ballroom would witness. And the black leather folder hidden inside his cabinet would force one of America's most powerful families to confront a truth they had buried for nearly 20 years. The following Saturday arrived faster than either of them expected. Maya had counted down the days by crossing small X's on the kitchen calendar. To her, the Children's Hope Charity Gala wasn't about wealthy people or famous guests. It was about dancing, music, and spending an evening with her father. Elijah, however, couldn't shake the strange feeling that had settled in his chest ever since he had seen the Whitmore Foundation's name on the invitation. For reasons he couldn't explain, something about that family always reminded him of promises that powerful people rarely kept. Late that afternoon, Maya carefully laid her blue dress across the bed. She brushed the fabric with her tiny hands as though it were made of silk instead of inexpensive cotton. "Daddy, can you tie the ribbon again?" Elijah smiled. "I've tied that ribbon 100 times. But you always make it prettier." He knelt beside her and carefully tied the faded white ribbon behind her back. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Instead, Elijah quietly reached into a small jewelry box sitting on the dresser. Inside was a silver butterfly hairpin. It had belonged to Maya's mother. He gently clipped it into Maya's hair. She looked at herself in the mirror. "I look like Mommy." His smile faded just enough to hide the tears trying to reach his eyes. "You look exactly like yourself. And that's even better." Across town, the Whitmore estate looked like something from a movie. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway. Garden lights illuminated every path. Crystal chandeliers glowed through enormous windows. Dozens of photographers waited outside the entrance. Business executives, politicians, professional athletes, television personalities. Every important name in Greenwich seemed to be attending. Tonight wasn't just another charity event. It was also the official celebration of Richard Whitmore's engagement to Vanessa Sterling. Every newspaper in Connecticut planned to cover it. Vanessa intended for every photograph to be perfect. Inside the mansion, she inspected every table herself. No wrinkles. No fingerprints. No mistakes. Her assistants rushed around trying to satisfy impossible demands. One young employee accidentally placed white roses on the wrong table. Vanessa didn't simply correct her. She humiliated her. Incompetent people shouldn't work in beautiful places. The frightened employee apologized repeatedly. Vanessa walked away without even looking back. She believed fear produced perfection. Richard Whitmore entered the ballroom a few moments later. Unlike Vanessa, he greeted employees politely. He thanked the caterers. He even helped an elderly volunteer carry a heavy box. Despite being one of Connecticut's richest men, Richard rarely acted superior. That difference between him and Vanessa hadn't gone unnoticed. Even his closest friends quietly questioned whether the engagement was a mistake. At 7 o'clock sharp, Elijah parked Old Blue 3 blocks away. Luxury cars filled every available parking space. He knew his old pickup didn't belong among Ferraris and Rolls-Royces. But Maya didn't seem to notice. She climbed out smiling. "Daddy, this place looks like a castle." "It does. Do princesses live here?" He chuckled. "Only if they remember to be kind." She laughed. "I guess that means not everyone inside is a princess." He smiled. "You're learning." As they approached the entrance, several guests turned their heads. Expensive tuxedos, diamond necklaces, custom-tailored gowns, and then a black single father wearing a simple navy blue suit that had clearly been altered more than once. Beside him stood a little girl in an old blue dress. Some guests smiled warmly. Others didn't bother hiding their judgment. One woman whispered to another, "Who invited them?" Another quietly replied, "It must be one of those charity families." Maya heard every word. She looked down at her shoes. Elijah pretended not to notice. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand. "You belong anywhere your heart belongs." She looked up. "You really believe that?" "I know it." Inside the ballroom, children from different schools gathered near the stage. Colorful decorations hung from the ceiling. A youth orchestra rehearsed quietly. Everything seemed magical. Maya immediately spotted her teacher, Mr. Brooks. Mrs. Bennett walked over smiling. "I'm so happy you both made it." "So are we." She leaned closer. Maya was selected to help present tonight's scholarship awards. Maya gasped. "I was." Mrs. Bennett nodded. "You earned it." Maya hugged her teacher before running toward the other children. Watching his daughter laugh, Elijah finally relaxed. Maybe tonight wouldn't be so bad after all. On the second-floor balcony, Vanessa happened to glance toward the entrance. Her eyes landed on Maya's faded dress. On Elijah. She frowned. Who let them in? An assistant checked the guest list. They're invited through the Children's Hope program. Vanessa folded her arms. They don't match tonight's image. The assistant looked confused. But they're guests. Vanessa answered coldly. Not for long. An hour later, dinner was served. Guests mingled across the ballroom. Maya politely thanked every waiter who offered her juice. She complimented the musicians. She even helped another little girl pick up a dropped napkin. People noticed. An elderly couple smiled. What wonderful manners. Her parents raised her well. Elijah overheard the compliment. His heart filled with quiet pride. Unfortunately, not everyone appreciated kindness. Vanessa descended the staircase surrounded by photographers. Every camera followed her. She smiled perfectly until she noticed Maya laughing with several children. Her expression hardened. She walked directly toward the group. Without introducing herself, she looked Maya up and down. What school are you from? Maya answered politely. Greenwich Elementary, ma'am. Vanessa forced a smile. And that's the nicest dress you own? The children stopped talking. Maya looked down. Yes, ma'am. Vanessa laughed softly. It certainly looks vintage. Several adults nearby chuckled. Maya didn't fully understand the insult, but she understood the laughter. She quietly stepped backward. Just then, Elijah appeared beside his daughter. Is there a problem? Vanessa barely looked at him. I'm simply encouraging honesty. Elijah calmly replied, kindness usually works better. For the first time, Vanessa actually looked him in the eyes. She didn't like what she saw. Not fear. Not embarrassment. Confidence. It irritated her. She leaned closer. You should teach your daughter that expensive events have dress codes. Elijah answered without raising his voice. I've always taught her that character matters more than clothing. Several nearby guests overheard him. One older businessman quietly smiled. Well said. Vanessa's face tightened. She wasn't used to anyone disagreeing with her. Especially not publicly. Before she could respond, Richard Whitmore approached. Vanessa. We're about to begin the scholarship presentation. She immediately changed her expression. Smiling, elegant, charming, as though nothing had happened. She slipped her arm through Richard's. But before walking away, she glanced back at Maya. There was something unsettling in her eyes. Not anger. Not annoyance. Something colder. Humiliation hadn't worked. And people had actually admired Elijah's dignity. Vanessa hated losing. She silently promised herself, before this night was over, everyone in that ballroom would remember exactly who was in charge. Across the room, Elijah watched her leave. His instincts, sharpened by years of surviving difficult times, whispered that the evening was far from over. He looked toward Maya, who had already started smiling again, unaware of the storm gathering around her. Then, almost unnoticed, an elderly man in a dark suit approached Elijah from behind. He studied Elijah's face carefully, then glanced at the worn black leather folder tucked discreetly under Elijah's arm. The man's eyes widened. In a barely audible voice, he asked, Mr. Brooks, where did you get that folder? For a long moment, Elijah didn't answer. The elderly man standing before him wasn't dressed like the other guests. His tuxedo was simple. His silver hair was neatly combed. A small gold lapel pin rested on his jacket. His name was Arthur Caldwell. Very few people at the gala recognized him. But those who did stepped aside with quiet respect. Arthur had served as the Whitmore family's personal attorney for more than 30 years. He had witnessed every merger, every lawsuit, every family secret. His eyes never left the black leather folder. I asked you a question, Arthur said gently. Where did you get that folder? Elijah's expression remained calm. It belonged to someone who trusted me. Arthur swallowed hard. For just a second, his face lost all color. Before he could ask another question, The orchestra began playing. A voice echoed through the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The scholarship presentation is about to begin." Arthur looked at Elijah once more. "We need to talk." Elijah nodded politely. After the ceremony, Arthur slowly walked away. But as he disappeared into the crowd, he reached for his phone. His hands were trembling. The ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Richard Whitmore stepped to the microphone. The applause was immediate. He smiled warmly. "Tonight isn't about wealth. It isn't about business. It's about giving children opportunities they deserve." The audience applauded again. Maya stood backstage with 7 other children selected to represent local schools. She nervously adjusted the ribbon on her blue dress. Mrs. Bennett squeezed her shoulder. "You'll do great." Maya smiled. "I hope so." Vanessa watched everything from the front row. She noticed something she didn't like. Several guests kept smiling at Maya. One elderly woman even whispered, "What a lovely little girl." Vanessa forced a smile. But inside, jealousy began to grow. Tonight was supposed to celebrate her. Instead, people were noticing someone else. The scholarship ceremony began. One by one, children walked across the stage. They received certificates, shook hands, smiled for photographs. Then Maya's name echoed through the ballroom. "Miss Maya Brooks." The audience applauded. She walked confidently onto the stage. Her old blue dress stood out among expensive suits and designer gowns. Yet somehow, she looked more elegant than anyone else. Richard handed her the certificate. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" he asked kindly. Maya smiled. "A doctor. So I can help people who can't afford one." The ballroom became unusually quiet. Richard smiled. "I think you'll make an excellent one." The applause grew louder than before. Vanessa noticed, and she hated every second of it. Dinner followed the ceremony. Guests mingled again. Television crews interviewed donors. Children laughed near the dessert tables. For a brief moment, everything seemed peaceful, until Maya accidentally found herself near Vanessa's private VIP lounge. She wasn't trying to enter. She had simply gotten lost looking for the restroom. Vanessa spotted her immediately. Her voice turned cold. "This area isn't for charity guests." Maya blinked. "I'm sorry. I was just looking." "I don't care what you were looking for." Several wealthy women turned to watch. One of them recognized Maya. "Isn't that the scholarship girl?" Vanessa folded her arms. "Exactly. She should learn where she belongs." Maya lowered her head. "I said I'm sorry." Vanessa stepped closer. "Sorry doesn't change appearances. You walk into every room looking like a mistake." The words hit harder than any slap. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She quietly turned around. Just then, Elijah appeared. He had been searching for his daughter. He immediately noticed her face. "What happened?" Before Maya could answer, Vanessa spoke. "Teach your daughter some manners." Elijah looked calmly at Maya. "Did you do anything wrong?" She shook her head. "No." He believed her instantly. Turning back to Vanessa, he said quietly, "My daughter knows respect. I'm not sure everyone here does." A few nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Vanessa's smile disappeared. "You should be careful how you speak to me." Elijah replied, "I speak to everyone the same way." The silence between them felt heavy. Vanessa had never met someone she couldn't intimidate. Meanwhile, Arthur Caldwell hurried down a quiet hallway toward Richard's private office. He closed the door behind him. Richard looked up. "What is it?" Arthur took a deep breath. "I think I've just seen something impossible." Richard frowned. "What are you talking about?" Arthur hesitated. "The black leather folder." Richard looked confused. "What folder?" Arthur's voice became barely audible. "The one we believed disappeared 19 years ago." Richard stood so quickly that his chair rolled backward. "That's impossible." "I know. But if it's genuine—" Arthur couldn't finish the sentence. Richard slowly removed his glasses. "Who has it?" Arthur answered. "The little girl's father." Silence filled the office. Richard stared through the window toward the ballroom. His heartbeat quickened. "Bring him to me." Arthur shook his head. He refused. He said, "After the ceremony." Richard whispered to himself, "Dear God, what have we done?" Back in the ballroom, the evening continued. Music played. Guests danced. Photographers captured smiling faces. But beneath the celebration, tension quietly spread. Several board members had noticed Richard's sudden disappearance. Vanessa noticed too. She searched the ballroom until she finally found him returning from the hallway. He looked unusually pale. "Richard, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." He forced a smile. "Just tired." But Vanessa wasn't convinced. His eyes kept drifting toward Elijah. The black leather folder. As the engagement toast approached, champagne was served to every table. Maya stood beside her father near one of the ballroom columns. She quietly whispered, "Daddy, can we leave after the cake?" He smiled. "Tired already?" She nodded. "My feet hurt." He chuckled softly. "Mine too." For the first time that evening, they both laughed. Watching from across the room, Vanessa mistook that laughter for confidence. She clenched her champagne glass. "They actually think they belong here." One of her friends leaned closer. "Forget about them." Vanessa slowly shook her head. "No. I'll make sure everyone remembers exactly who they are." She placed her champagne glass onto a nearby table. She noticed a waiter carrying a tray filled with red wine. An idea formed in her mind. A cruel one. She smiled. Not because she was happy, but because she believed she had found the perfect way to humiliate the little girl in front of the entire ballroom. Across the room, Elijah looked down at Maya, completely unaware that within the next few minutes, her mother's treasured blue dress would be torn apart before hundreds of stunned guests. The ballroom sparkled beneath towering crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played softly near the grand staircase. Champagne glasses clinked as Richard Whitmore stepped toward the stage to thank the guests for supporting the Children's Hope Foundation. No one noticed Vanessa quietly walking away from the front table. Her eyes were locked on Maya. The little girl stood beside her father, smiling as she admired the enormous wedding cake. She had no idea someone was about to make her the center of the evening. Vanessa picked up a glass of red wine from a passing waiter. She smiled. She deliberately walked straight toward Maya. Just as she reached her, she pretended to lose her balance. The wine splashed across the front of Maya's faded blue dress. A deep crimson stain spread across the fabric. The ballroom gasped. "Oh my goodness," Vanessa said dramatically. "I guess cheap fabric really attracts accidents." Several guests laughed nervously. Maya stared at the stain. Her lips trembled. This was my mommy's dress." Her tiny voice barely carried across the room. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, stop being dramatic. It's only an old dress." She grabbed the stained fabric. "If it's already ruined, why not finish the job?" With one violent pull, "Ryap," the sound echoed through the silent ballroom. The shoulder of the dress tore apart. Maya instinctively covered herself with both hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She wasn't crying because people were staring. She wasn't crying because she felt embarrassed. She was crying because that dress was the last birthday gift her mother had ever given her. The orchestra stopped playing. Every conversation ended. No one moved. Elijah slowly stepped forward. Without saying a single word, he removed his navy blue suit jacket. He gently wrapped it around Maya's shoulders. Then he knelt in front of her. "Look at me." She looked into his eyes. "What did Mommy always tell you?" Maya sniffled. "Clothes can tear, but kindness never should." He smiled proudly. "Exactly. You have nothing to be ashamed of." She nodded through her tears. The guests watched in complete silence. Many of them lowered their heads. Several mothers quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Vanessa folded her arms. "I'm still waiting for security. They don't belong here." Elijah slowly stood. He looked directly at Vanessa. His voice remained calm. You just destroyed the last gift my wife ever gave our daughter. Vanessa shrugged. It was worthless. Elijah reached inside his jacket. The same worn black leather folder appeared in his hands. He placed it carefully on a nearby table. Richard Whitmore froze. No, he whispered. Arthur Caldwell rushed forward. Richard. It's exactly the one. Richard slowly walked toward Elijah. Every guest watched. His face had turned completely pale. He stared at the folder without touching it. Finally, he looked up. Where did you get this? Elijah answered quietly. It belonged to my father. Richard's breathing became uneven. Your father? Elijah opened the folder. Inside were decades-old documents. Original land deeds. Corporate agreements. A signed partnership contract. And one handwritten letter. Arthur carefully unfolded the letter. His voice trembled as he began reading. If anything ever happens to me, my equal ownership of Whitmore Development shall pass to my son, Elijah Brooks. Silence. Complete silence. Guests looked at one another in disbelief. Richard closed his eyes. I searched for this folder for years. Elijah nodded. My father never wanted money. He believed friendship was worth more. But after he died, my mother couldn't bear to fight in court. So she walked away. Arthur continued examining the documents. Then he looked directly at Richard. They're authentic. Every signature. Every seal. Every page. Richard slowly removed his glasses. His eyes filled with regret. My father never told me. Elijah nodded. I know. I didn't come here for revenge. I came because Maya wanted to attend a school gala. He looked toward his daughter. And because some promises shouldn't stay buried forever. Richard turned toward the guests. His voice cracked. Ladies and gentlemen, I owe this man and his family an apology. He walked directly to Elijah. To everyone's astonishment, one of Connecticut's richest billionaires extended his hand. I'm sorry. I should have known the truth years ago. Elijah accepted the handshake. Not because of the money. Not because of the audience. But because bitterness had never been part of his heart. Richard then turned toward Maya. I'm sorry for what happened to your mother's dress. I can't replace it. But I promise. I'll spend the rest of my life honoring what it meant. Little Maya smiled politely. My mommy said, people who say sorry should try to become better. Richard nodded. I will. Vanessa stared in disbelief. This is ridiculous. You can't believe him. Arthur interrupted her. The legal documents recognize Elijah Brooks as the rightful heir to half of the original Whitmore Development Partnership. Vanessa's face lost all color. Richard slowly removed the engagement ring from her finger. This isn't because of the documents. He spoke calmly. It's because tonight, I finally saw who you truly are. Our engagement is over. Vanessa looked around desperately. No one defended her. The same guests who had admired her beauty only minutes earlier now looked away in disappointment. She quietly walked toward the ballroom doors. This time, no cameras followed. No applause. No admiration. Only silence. After she disappeared, Richard looked at Elijah once more. What do you want? The ballroom waited for his answer. Elijah looked around the room. Then smiled gently. I don't want your mansion. I don't want your company. I don't want revenge. He placed the folder back inside his jacket. My father taught me that wealth means nothing if it costs your peace. Richard looked stunned. Then what do you want? Elijah glanced at Maya. She was still holding the torn blue dress carefully in her hands. I want every child helped by your foundation to receive an education without worrying about money. Richard didn't hesitate. You have my word. Arthur smiled. For the first time in 20 years. It feels like your fathers finally finished the partnership they started. The guests rose to their feet. One by one. They applauded. Not for a billionaire. Not for a business deal. But for a father who had shown his daughter that dignity was more powerful than anger. Months later, The Whitmore Foundation announced the Eleanor Brooks Scholarship, named after Maya's late mother. Thousands of children received opportunities because of it. Maya framed what remained of her blue dress inside a glass case in their living room. Visitors often asked why she kept a torn dress instead of throwing it away. She always smiled before answering. "This isn't the dress someone destroyed. It's the dress that showed me who my father really was." And sometimes, the greatest inheritance a parent can leave behind isn't money. It's the courage to choose dignity, even when the whole world is watching.